YouTube. And welcome back to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and I'm so happy to have back on the program my good friend, mentor, advisor, Doc Wallach. And we're also joined by Carolyn Clancy today. And since Doc tries to stay current, is up on the news. Doc, why don't you start to talk about the wildfires, what caused them, how to prevent them, and what we could do to help ourselves?
Okay. Well, I've been talking about these wildfires for the last 3 to 4 years when they had the similar thing in Borneo and Australia. They couldn't put out those fires for a year. And the Great Barrier Reef was dying and the ocean's dying. And so I kind of did an autopsy on the earth and figured it out that it's not the fossil fuels that's causing all these problems and the carbon dioxide going up. Carbon dioxide is going up, but not because of fossil fuels. The carbon dioxide is going up because we have all of these dams, okay? For instance, we have in the world 1 million hydroelectric dams to make electricity, damming up the big rivers. We have 2 million dams to make water conservation and irrigation ponds. And we have 400 million farm ponds that intercept little creeks before they go into the bigger branches, then go into the big rivers, then out to the ocean. What happens here is all of these dams are cutting off the food supply to the oceans and the big lakes and the rivers. And the food supply, of course, is the silt from volcanic eruptions. That's why all the big reefs are associated with volcanic island chains, including the Great Barrier Reef near Queensland. There's a whole chain of volcanoes in Queensland, and the rivers go down and used to feed the western side of the Great Barrier Reef. Well, about 25 years ago, they dammed up those rivers to make electricity, and it shut off the food supply to the algae that was being eaten by the reef polyps that maintained the reef, okay, and built the reef. And so the same thing is true on the west coast of America right now. We have literally thousands and thousands of dams, hydroelectric dams in western and northern California and Oregon and Washington State. You know, 80% of the power comes from these hydroelectric dams, cut off the food supply. Well, the algae actually takes the carbon dioxide out of the air, pops off the oxygen part, dumps it into the water for the fish, dumps it in the air for us. And then the carbon gas is converted to carbon chains to make amino acids, carbohydrates, sugars, and fibrous material to make stems and leaves for the plants. Well, when you cut off the food supply by damming up the rivers and you stop all the silt, all the minerals that are going to feed all this plant life, remember, the ocean is 3/5 of the Earth's surface and contains 10 times more plant mass than the dry land does. When you cut off the food supply to it, the ocean dies. When you cut off the food supply to it, the reefs die. And so what happens here, the carbon dioxide goes up and up and up and up. And Alan, you know this, coal is carbon, wood is carbon. When the air fills up with carbon, like it did in Australia and Borneo and here in California and Washington State and Oregon, the air becomes fuel. And so actually I'm finishing up a series of articles called Sky Fire, where you can actually see here in California where the firemen would put out the fire, they'd start loading up all their equipment back on the truck, and before they turned around, the fire pop up again because there's a spark in the ground, and it would set off all the carbon in the air that's still in the air. And that's why they haven't been able to put these fires out, because the air is now the fuel. Okay, so that's why I call it Sky Fire. Okay.
Well, then, can I just see if I understand what you're saying so far?
Mm-hmm.
We built these dams. The dams have stopped the silt and the natural minerals from entering the ocean. The oceans are then not able, I missed the point, not able to do what that would create a better atmosphere.
Okay, stop. The ocean now
Right.
is unable, all the plant life in the ocean is unable to break down the carbon dioxide in the water and the air into oxygen and carbon chains, changing them from carbon dioxide gas to oxygen and carbon chains. It can't do that because algae, plankton, and kelp and all these ocean plants require 20 nutrients to make that biological conversion. Okay, 17 of those nutrients are the minerals that come in the silt. When you cut off the silt supply to all these plants, they're not going to die immediately. So it's not like every plant in the ocean dies. But what happens is they can't function properly. Just like when you get vitamin D3 deficiency, you're going to get rickets. You're not going to die, but you won't be able to run a marathon. Okay, same principle. And so what we have to do here, and I'm trying to get a grant, I will be able to rebuild the Great Barrier Reef just off the coast of Queensland, Australia, by putting augers in the dams. They don't have to tear down the dams. They can keep their hydroelectric dams. But we need to auger all that silt that's been building up for 25 years behind those dams and feed the algae, which feed plankton, which build and maintain the reef, the Great Barrier Reef. Once I do that, I'll be able to get it done in every reef, and also we'll be able to do it for the ocean, and we'll turn everything around. But trying to get everybody to go to electric cars and electric this and electric that and electric, it only makes it worse because they're cutting off more silt to the ocean and to the reefs and so forth. And so they got it backwards.
So what can we do now about the fires on the West Coast, all up and down the West Coast? Is there a solution?
Yes, the solution is we have to start feeding immediately. We have to start feeding the plants in the ocean along the coastal part of the Western United States, from all the way up from BC, Canada, all the way down to Mexico. We need to be putting in these minerals by the truckloads, tons and tons of ground up rocks and minerals and silt that we can auger out of the riverbeds behind the dams and put it along the coast here. And it will then allow these plants in the oceans to convert immediately all this carbon dioxide into useful stuff, oxygen and carbon chains. And so we need to do that immediately. And that's why I'm coming out with this article. I mean, you can go to, I actually have my presentation at Tesla, August 7th through 11th, last year, 2019. Okay, I was one of the 5 featured speakers at Tesla because I knew what the problem was with all the ocean dying and the reefs dying and so forth, and the sky fires, and the sky fires in Australia and New Zealand, and also in it's going to happen here in the United States. And sure enough, it happened. Okay, and then they actually came out in the 4th quarter of 2019. We're talking about October, November, December, their quarterly magazine, and my article, which is called Prescription for Mother Earth, is the featured article in that magazine from Tesla. So I urge everybody to get that stuff. And then, of course, we also have a 2 CD set which goes over this. Okay, it's called Rare Earth Forbidden Cures. Yep. Okay. And then, of course, it's also we have a CD and a DVD called Is Your Doctor Killing You? Right. And in this case, the dams are killing us and killing the earth and killing the oceans. And so we have to change all that. We don't.
I just want to tell people, if they want to order any of those DVDs, you can call Vital Health News 888-275-7755. That will also be the number for some of the incredible supplements Doc has formulated, and he's going to mention here in a little bit. But so if we had more carbon chains in the ocean, what would that do to the atmosphere on the West Coast? How would that stop fires?
Well, it sucks the carbon dioxide out of the air to make the carbon chains. I mean, the plants can't make carbon chains without carbon. Okay. And so the algae, the plankton, and the various ocean plants can kind of bang along with minimal amounts of carbon. But if you want to maximize their carbon consumption, get all the carbon dioxide out of the air, so that the plants can do their job. And you have to feed them. You have to give them the minerals, and that's where we're going to get the silt, which has been the food for the sea plants since the beginning of time. And only man could figure out some way to kill the ocean by cutting off the food supply to the ocean.
That makes sense. By getting the carbon dioxide out of the air will create less tendencies for fires to be created.
That's correct,
because
carbon dioxide in the air is a fuel, just like wood and coal, both of which are carbon. So it doesn't matter if the carbon is in the air and there's fire, it will burn the carbon in the air as fuel. That's the problem.
Right. No, that's great. No, that is really great. That's a really great cure. So are people listening to your advice about this?
No. That's why I have to get a grant and save the Great Barrier Reef. And so it'll be an unimpeachable experiment, which will show people that I know what I'm talking about. You have to appreciate that environmentalists have an agenda.
What's their agenda?
To get rid of fossil fuels.
And that's
and they will kill you. They will kill you to make sure that you use electric cars.
Or another alternative to get rid of fossil fuels, but also get the energy needs we can from solar.
Well, that's okay, but you'll never be able to get as much as you can from hydroelectric. But what they did, they made up the mistake. They cut off the food supply to the ocean because they didn't let the silt go through.
Right. We've created a mess. So we should put you in charge.
We've starved the earth, okay, because all the plants. Now, this happened 10 million years ago, before there were fossil fuels. We know this because they have amber from forests that burned and stuff like that, which is, the sap from the pine trees that turned into amber. And they tracked it every year for 10 million years. And there were these big spikes of carbon dioxide, okay, 5, 6, 7 million years ago. And I tracked out why that happened. Well, it happened because it was 6,000 years between volcanic eruptions. No minerals, no volcanic ash to feed the algae. So the carbon dioxide started going up then, okay, and then that's why all of the dinosaurs died.
So we need volcanic eruptions, the silt in the river, to feed the oceans its natural minerals.
That's right, to feed the oceans, to feed the reefs, and to feed all the plants in the ocean, and then that allows the normal cycles to go. Okay, if you shut off the food supply, I mean, what if you have a farm out in the desert and you're growing all these foods and grains and vegetables and crops in the desert because you're irrigating every day? What if you shut off the water supply out there in the desert for a month? Everything dies. Same principle.
Yes. Wow, but okay. So hopefully someone will listen to this who knows what they're doing and implement some of these ideas.
I don't have much hope.
But what about the people breathing the smoke and all the toxins? Anything you can recommend to protect their lungs and detox that?
Yeah. Number one, they need to get on the 90 essential nutrients, wear a mask, right?
Right.
And they need to take the 90 essential nutrients. And our detox, we have what we call herbal rainforest, has 13 cleansing herbs and 78 minerals. And they can take that, take an ounce of that per 100 pounds of body weight before bedtime, ounce when they wake up in the morning. And these 13 cleansing herbs will cleanse the liver, cleanse the intestines, stay away from gluten, wheat, barley, rye, and oats, live like an Asian, live on rice and sweet potatoes and vegetables and fish and poultry and red meat, but no wheat, barley, rye, and oats. And of course, when you look at who has what Let me give you a little example here. Let's look at California and Canada. They're about the same number of people, 39 million people in California and 37 million people in Canada. Canada has 9,000 deaths from COVID, and California has 14,000. So why is it that California has 5,000 more deaths than Canada? Okay, well, because California does a lot of the bad stuff. They fry everything. They eat wheat, barley, rye, and oats. And Canada eats a lot of wheat. So let's look at Canada versus Hawaii, which is a rice-eating state because they deal with the Asians all, since before their existence. Let's look at Canada. 138,000 cases of COVID, 9,000 deaths. You look at Hawaii, okay, they only have 10,000 infections versus 138,000, and they have 100 deaths versus 9,000 deaths. What's the difference? Hawaii, they just live on rice and sweet potatoes like Asians do. And so they're able to absorb nutrients. And so their bone marrow is able to make white blood cells and antibodies to go kill and eat the virus. It's not that they're not less exposed. I mean, they are heavy traffic because they're a vacation magnet, right? But the reason why they have such low rate is they eat rice, which doesn't damage the intestines. So they're able to absorb nutrients, which then allow the bone marrow to make white blood cells and antibodies.
Well, that's one of your major theses. I'd like to just repeat for people who are new to you and Youngevity is that gluten, as far as I know, stops the absorption of vital nutrients into the body. So your body then doesn't have the energy, the immunity. It has to then take minerals from other. What's that?
There's no defense.
No defense. So gluten is the worst thing you can do for your immune system.
That is correct. The only thing worse than gluten is a lead bullet to the head.
Okay, well, both are not pleasant, but doctors doctors will never tell you that. And people who have gluten intolerance, everyone has gluten intolerance.
That's
what
correct.
Doc is.
I think you got it. Okay, now let me tell you one thing. We have another tool coming out. It's called the red warning lights. You know the red warning light in the dashboard of your car?
Right.
Now, when that red warning light comes on, does the red warning light destroy your car? No. It tells you, you better check the fan belt to see if it's still making the fan blow on your radiator. You need to check the radiator, see that rocks didn't bust it and all the coolant is leaking out. You need to check your oil levels. So the red warning light is telling you, as the name implies, it's warning you that something may be going on here. You better check it out. The same thing is true with pre-existing conditions, which we call the metabolic syndrome. We're talking about obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, increased triglycerides, kidney disease. When you have any of these things, you have a terrible gluten issue, and you are going to have iron injections and B12 injections every month. They might even give you a transfusion every month so you'll have platelets because your bone marrow is dead. You can't make platelets, you can't make red blood cells, you can't make white blood cells to kill and eat the viruses. And so now you become a ATM machine for the doctor so he can put his 3 sons through college. Right. Gluten is the doctor's best friend. Oh, eat whole grains. Go for it.
Whole grains are nothing with wheat
or barley, rye, or oats. Or rye or oats. There are no such things as gluten-free oats. Okay. The breakfast of champions will kill you. I want you to think about it. Professional athletes that make $1 or $2 or $3 million per event, their average lifespan when you take all sports combined is 62 years of age, except for basketball players, which is 51.
Really? Why is that? Do they overexert their adrenaline?
No. They eat gluten. They eat whole grains. They eat, the breakfast of champions, Wheaties, gluten alert, gluten alert, gluten alert. Okay. And they can't make platelets. They bleed to death.
Right.
They get a little bump and they bleed to death. It's just like Herman Cain. You remember the name Herman Cain? He was the CEO of Godfather's Pizza, a billionaire. And he had 8 of these pre-existing conditions. The last day of June of this year, he develops COVID-19. They put him in a private hospital with oxygen because he has respiratory distress, put him on oxygen and some IV drugs to kill viruses. 29 days later, before the end of July, not even a month, he's dead, 74 years old, from complications, they say, of COVID. Well, he had 8 pre-existing conditions, including obesity, arthritis. He had colon cancer, which they said was in remission. Was it really colon cancer? Or was it ulcerative colitis or celiac disease? Who knows? I didn't see the slides. But he dies. And when they did the autopsy on him 3 days later, he did not have viral pneumonia. All of his capillaries in his body were filled with little blood clots. The blood clots didn't have platelets in them. The blood clots were just sticky red blood cells. And he was oxygen deprived because he couldn't transport oxygen around in all these little capillaries that were plugged up with these little weird no platelet blood clots. Okay.
What
this is one of the
that? Yeah. Okay.
Well, what caused the blood clots? Yeah, was the deficiencies of all the nutrients necessary for everything to run normally. Okay. So his red blood cells were bigger than normal. They're sticky, and so when you have a B12 deficiency, your red blood cells are like 50% bigger than normal, and they won't go through the capillaries, and they stick together because the surface is sticky because they're abnormal. They're not normal.
Right.
And when you go back to the Spanish flu 100 years ago, there was 110 million people get COVID in India in 6 months. 20 million died in 6 months from COVID in India. Or not COVID, excuse me, it was H1N1. It was a Spanish flu, H1N1. And they all bled to death. I reviewed all the autopsies that were published, and they all died from bleeding because they'd been eating wheat for 10,000 years in India, because it was a wild grass in India, and they began to eat wheat 10,000 years ago. And and so all their intestines were dead. They couldn't absorb nutrients, and so they couldn't make platelets and red blood cells, so they all bled to death.
Wow. So, but that's changed now because India stopped eating wheat and they're eating rice. So you're saying that
no. Only 1/3 of the people in India still eat wheat. 2/3 eat rice. And when you look at the northern part of India, where they have the wheat-eating people, they have 84% of the infections and 95% of the deaths. The southern part of India, okay, which is the rice-eating part of India, they have only 5% of the deaths and 16% of the infections. They're the same people. It's just they eat differently because of the terrain. Okay, you can't grow rice up in the mountains, and you can't, grow wheat down in the swamps, and so they're eating what their land will support. And because of the drastic differences, okay, now I want you to appreciate that when you look at India with 1.4 billion people,
yeah,
they have 80,000 deaths and almost 5 million infections. We have almost 7 million infections and 200,000 deaths. What's the difference? The breakfast of champions, pizza crust, spaghetti, flour tortellini, Wheaties.
Wait,
breakfast of champions.
I just want to sum this up. You're saying there's a direct correlation between eating wheat and lowered immune system and predisposition to getting the virus. So
that is correct.
All this together.
Well, here's where I got the clue, Alan. Okay. In October, when they were first mentioning COVID-19, they said when a 3-year-old gets it, they get minor common cold-like symptoms for 3 days and it's over with. Their body temperature goes up like a half a degree. You can't even class it as a fever. It goes up from 98.6 to 99.4 or something like that. When a 63-year-old, a 73-year-old, an 83-year-old who've been eating gluten for 60, 70, 80 years get it, they get terrible cataclysmic side effects and maybe even die. So what's the difference between the 63-year-old and the 73-year-old and the 83-year-old and the 3-year-old? Well, the 3-year-old has only been eating gluten for maybe 6 months or a year or 2 years. their bone marrow still gets some nutrition. They still make white blood cells and platelets to go through the bloodstream and kill and eat the virus.
Wow. Well, we have to stop. If we're going to change our immunity, we have to stop. We have to change our diet. We have to start
Immediately.
eating.
Immediately. What you want to do is give all, if you have any, like oatmeal stacked up in your closet and Wheaties stocked up in your closet and wheat flour and stuff like that and frozen bread, package it up in a lovely package and give it all to your doctor.
That's funny. No, that is a great introduction for people first tuning into you. Of course, Doc's most famous book is Dead Doctors Don't Lie. And he's also the founder and formulator of Youngevity, where he'll be, he puts together a lot of these great supplements that will bring people back to health. Call this number. There's someone standing by there now, 888-275-7755. We're going to go through some more with my friend Carolyn Clancy, some more illnesses and what Youngevity could be so helpful.
Yeah, well, let me just interject here, Alan.
Yes.
That we have a basic formula, which we call the Healthy Start Pack, which has all 90 essential nutrients in it. Now, you have to appreciate that my thesis for my postdoctoral fellowship, which is like a PhD degree, I already had my degree in agriculture, I had my degree in veterinary medicine. I had a postdoctoral fellowship, a $25 million grant from the National Institutes of Health. And to make a long story short, I did 20,000 autopsies. And my thesis is in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure, because I showed very clearly that there are no genetically transmitted diseases. There are no genetically transmitted birth defects. And I became one of the two fathers of the science of epigenetics. Okay, yeah. I'm one of the two fathers in the science of epigenetics. Okay, because I showed very clearly by doing 20,000 autopsies, 17,000 some change of over 454 species of zoo animals in the big zoos around the United States and Canada and Mexico, and 3,000 humans. And then Dr. Milan and I went to China and we did 1,700 autopsies in kids under the age of 10 that died of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy heart disease. 35% of them had cystic fibrosis, 100% had muscular dystrophy, and 200 of those kids out of the 1,700 under the age of 1 year of age would have been diagnosed with Sutton-Medina syndrome here in the United States. Using that information, we got a federal judge, April 16th, 2013, to force the manufacturers of baby formulas, Enfamil, Similac, that kind of thing, to put that nutrient in there. And a year and a half later, September 13, 2014, big headlines like Third World War in the Charlotte Observer, Charlotte, North Carolina. We don't know why, but Sutton-Medina syndrome has vanished in North Carolina. 3 months later, the same thing happened in the newspapers in Missouri. We don't know why, but Sutton-Medina syndrome has vanished in the state of Missouri. 3 months later, every newspaper in the world said, we don't know why, but Sutton-Medina syndrome diagnoses have dropped drastically by 85 to 95%. Well, that's because they forced them to put that nutrient into the baby formulas. Only 2% of the babies that died of Sutton-Medina syndrome were in bed with their mothers when they died. 98% were not. That was a lie, that mothers were laying on their babies. That was crapola science, because doctors didn't know what it was, so they wouldn't say, man, I don't know. Let's just blame it on the mom and go out and have a hamburger, okay? And so then I redid a bunch of those autopsies, and none of them ever suffocated, but they all died of that same heart disease that those 1,700 kids died from in China. Well, it turns out you haven't heard much about muscular dystrophy here lately. I gave Jerry Lewis about 50 charts 2 years before he died of kids that Marvin and I, one of our Navy SEALs who was an Amish kid, think of that, an Amish kid became a Navy SEAL. And he came back and was enjoying what I was doing, so he was working with me. Turns out the Amish have all these birth defects, including muscular dystrophy. So we began to cure them by giving them the 90 essential nutrients, getting them off of gluten, because they were big on eating wheat and barley, rye, and oats, because that's what they would grow, these grains. We'd get them off those grains, have them eat sweet potatoes and rice, take the 90 essential nutrients, and would cure their muscular dystrophy. So he gave Jerry Lewis 50 of those charts. He took it to the Muscular Dystrophy Association. They immediately fired Jerry Lewis.
I know, a tragedy.
Okay. Yeah, and he died 2 years later. All right. And then the sick part about this is that was in 2011. In 2015, they stopped the telethon because they couldn't raise a penny without Jerry Lewis, okay, on the telethon. And he brought them the cure for it. Well, now that that federal judge ordered that nutrient to be put in these baby formulas, you have to appreciate that almost all the kids with cystic fibrosis, muscular dystrophy, and sedimentary syndrome, they were all on these baby formulas. None were breastfed. So we put the nutrient in the baby formulas. It ended muscular dystrophy, cystic fibrosis, and crib death. So we're very, very proud of that.
That is an amazing story. How come nobody is publishing this? Nobody's acknowledging you in the big health world for having.
Because all the people who are earthlings have an agenda.
Right.
All they're worried about is carbon fuels and get rid of the cars that burn gas and stuff like that. Eat more whole grains.
Before we go to Caroline, can you just explain what epigenetics means? What does that mean, epigenetics?
You asking Caroline or me?
You, and then we'll go to Caroline. I'm asking you, Doc.
Okay. Epigenetics is a science that replaces genetics. Okay, there are no genetically transmitted diseases. There are no genetically transmitted birth defects. That's why my thesis on my 20,000 autopsies is in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure. Okay.
Okay.
And I was nominated for a Nobel Prize for that. I was given the Klaus Schwartz Award. Okay, I was given many other, very well-respected awards and things like that. But the general public, they still go to their doctor, and the doctor says, oh, don't listen to that Wallach. He's just a veterinarian. What does he know? Well, I'm a licensed physician since 1982 in Oregon, right? But they just say, oh, don't worry about what Wallach says. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm your doctor. You listen to me. And so, well, my doctor said, well, that would be the equivalent of saying, don't waste your money by putting oil in your car. Do not put oil in your car. What you want to do is put dirt from Texas in there. It's only 10 cents a quart. You'll save a lot of money by putting dirt from Texas in your car. There's bound to be some oil in that dirt from Texas. An insane person would not do that to their car. When their doctor says, oh, just eat well, you get everything you need. My doctor says I can get everything I need just by eating well. Bam, you're dead.
Awful. But what is epigenetics?
Okay, epigenetics is the science that has replaced genetics. Okay, every birth defect, except ones that are caused by viruses early in pregnancy and or ones that are caused by poisons and pharmaceuticals early in pregnancy. 99% of all birth defects are caused by nutritional deficiencies in the developing embryo. Let's just take one that everybody agrees is a genetic disease. Sickle cell anemia in Black people, right?
Yeah.
And it's very common in the central part of Africa because that nutrient is missing in the soil there. So it's very common. And of course, doctors, they said, oh, it's a genetic thing. And when slaves came here, they brought it with them. But it turns out the white people have more sickle cell anemia than Black people. But they don't call it sickle cell anemia because they can't have a Black gene. So they called it thalassemia. It's the same nutritional deficiency early in pregnancy when the bone marrow cells are being formed that make hemoglobin. And you can have 2% sickled cells, you can have 5%, 10%, you have the trait. But when you have the full-blown disease, you have 25 to 50% sickled cells. If you're Black, if you're white or yellow or red, it's called thalassemia, but it's the same exact disease. And so the same thing is true for type 2 diabetes. Now, type 2 diabetes, of course, is part of this red warning light thing, along with obesity. And you have to appreciate that there's a special science that goes along with the Black community, okay? And Black Gene Lies, the book, and Black Gene Lies, the CD was paid for by a Black pastor from Atlanta, Georgia, by the name of Creflo Dollar, because his daughter was born with a type of asthma that doctors told him it was a genetic form of asthma found in black kids, and she'd be dead before she was 12. By the time she got to 12, she was having like 12 crises a day, and they said she's not going to make it. She's at that point. She's going to die tomorrow kind of thing. I cured her in 2 weeks. He paid for the first 10,000 copies of that book, Black Gene Lies, to be published. And you ask why? Well, that's because he said, okay, Wallach.
Can you wait?
He said, okay, Wallach, I need a couple more sentences here.
Go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead.
He said, okay, Wallach, what about all these other genetic diseases in black folks? He said, well, there are no genetic diseases in any vertebrates, including black folks. He says, you're telling me that diabetes and obesity and high blood pressure and heart disease and kidney failure are not genetic? That's right. And he said, well, let me give you 15 of my senior from my churches here, which he did. They all had these various diseases thought to be genetic in the black community. And I cured them all in a month or so. And he paid for the first 10,000 copies of this book to be published, which goes into all the diseases said to be genetic in the black population. And of course, I spoke to his church, and he made a CD out of it. So the book and the CD, Black Gene Lies, is available also. And there are no genetic diseases, Alan. Get over it.
I believe you, Doc. I believe you. So let's thank you. You make a really good point. The medical community needs an education from you.
That's right. They should be required to read those books, watch the DVDs, listen to the CDs, and pass a test before they get their licenses, because they kill people. And of course, that's why we came out with the CD and the DVD. Is your doctor killing you by just treating your symptoms as opposed to getting rid of the basic root cause of the problem?
Okay, great. Thank you for that whole introduction to your work, and there's much more. Carolyn has some great questions from people she's worked with, because she's been around the products for a long time. So unmute yourself, could you, Carolyn? Welcome. Thanks for listening. And if anyone else wants to come on, they could come on and ask questions after Carolyn. So go ahead, Carolyn. It's all yours. You have some great questions.
Okay, Doc, I just got a call from a gentleman who believes he has macular degeneration. And I asked him, are you really, really sure? Because I know of the correlation between ONA, and I would like you to address this so I can help him.
Okay, ONA is an acronym for optic nerve atrophy. It occurs when you have osteoporosis of the skull. The optic nerve is formed in the brain, goes through the skull to the back of the eye. Well, anytime you have osteoporosis in any bones, including the skull, the bones get thicker with connective tissue, not minerals, but connective tissue. So, for instance, there's a disease called Paget's disease, which was identified in, 1817, something like that, 1814, by a pathologist by the name of Paget. And he noticed that some people, instead of having a normal skull a quarter of an inch thick, their skulls were an inch thick. You notice he had all these weird symptoms of a gradual blindness, ONA, optic nerve atrophy. I'll tell you a quick little thing I had. I was giving a lecture in Utah. This has got to be 30 years ago. And the first question in the Q&A period after my lecture, I says, my mom, is 70 years old. She's been legally blind 6 years, and they say she got macular degeneration. Anything you can do for her? I said, yeah, I can reverse that. Guy jumps up in the back of the room and says, Wallach, you're a GD liar. I said, well, who are you, sir? He says, well, I'm an eye doctor. I'm a surgeon. And I diagnose people with macular degeneration all the time, and there's nothing you can do about it. I said, well, let's have a little wager here. He says, you're on. I said, tomorrow, or this evening, bring me 12 of your patients that you, meaning him, had diagnosed with macular degeneration. So there's no equivocation about the diagnosis. And I'm going to come up with a paper to tell them what to do for it. I will talk to each one of them. That way I'll be sure that they're getting the information. I'm not going to depend on you giving them the information, because you're antagonistic to me. And if I win, you're going to pay for all their supplements for the rest of their life. You're going to pay for a very large bottle of expensive French wine for me. You're going to take me out to Ruth Chris's steakhouse, and you're going to apologize publicly. He says, you're on. So the next day he brought me 27 charts. He says, pick your dozen. I said, well, let's do all 27. He says, you're on. So in 90 days on my program, which was Healthy Brain and Heart Pack, the Vision FX, our antioxidants, see here, our collagen to rebuild the skull and so forth, and vitamin D3. And in 90 days, I say 25 of the 27 could read 20/20 in 90 days without glasses. It took 2 more weeks for the other 2. And he fulfilled his losing the wagers. He fulfilled all that. Okay. And most people, if you don't have glaucoma, which is, the eye drops in the eyes for pressure in the eyes, if you don't have cataracts, you don't have obvious macular degeneration, the doctor's going to, you have gradual vision loss, he's going to diagnose you with macular degeneration because your doctor doesn't know anything about osteoporosis of the skull. Ellen, have you ever heard of a doctor talk about osteoporosis of the skull?
Never.
Okay. And so that's why I came up with this book. Okay. Yeah. It's called It's All in Your Head. It became a #1 bestseller in ebooks a couple of weeks ago on Kindle and Amazon and Apple. Okay, it goes into the 25 different diseases you can get, including blindness, ONA, where the optic nerve is being squeezed by the skull as it thickens with Wallach's disease, not Paget's disease anymore, because Paget thought it was a genetic problem. And I didn't want it to go for 1,000 years, and everybody thought, well, there's nothing to do about it. It's a genetic thing. No, it's a simple nutritional deficiency. You treat it like osteoporosis, and it all goes away.
Well, you're the only person who ever talked about osteoporosis of the skull.
That's right. You are correct.
Yeah. Other people just don't know that it exists.
I'm the only one that's done 32,000 autopsies, in which I've, done examinations of their skull as well as the rest of their bodies. So of course, I don't know if you know this, but yesterday, Alan, Lancet, very famous medical journal, right? Lancet.
Yeah.
They came out. Is that sirens or what is that in the background?
That's sirens in New York.
Yeah, New York City. There you go. Okay. At any rate, Lancet came out yesterday and said all the medical schools on earth are just teaching their medical students to be pill pushers. They're not teaching them the causes of disease so they can cure the disease. Lancet said there's nothing but pill pushers being taught. Okay. And so they know nothing about nutrition. He said, don't even ask your doctor about nutrition. This was Lancet. And I've been saying it for 50 years.
So the person that called Caroline for macular degeneration, you would have them take which product to build on?
Okay. I would have them take 1 Healthy Brain and Heart Pack per 100 pounds of body weight, 1 bottle of MSM per 100 pounds of body weight. Take 3 of those twice a day. It's a big bottle. You can do that. Vitamin D3, 3 of those twice a day, 2 bottles a month. Also the collagen, 2 bottles of the capsules of glucogel a day, so they can take 3 times a day. Get rid of all the gluten, no wheat, no barley, rye, and oats. They can maximize absorption of these things. And people who are losing their vision because of, quote, macular degeneration, unquote, almost always within 90 days will be able to, even if they're legally blind, 6, 8, 10 years, will be able to read 20/20.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yes.
Carolyn, does that answer your question? You have more, but did that answer that for you?
Yes, I love it. It's very thorough, and I will be able to address both ONA and macular degeneration for this gentleman and others.
Okay, thank you.
What else you got, Carolyn?
All right. A grandma called about her 9-year-old grandson, who, as a result of vaccines as an infant, now has many neurological diseases. Also, it's induced autism. And, well, when I had mentioned some of the capsules, well, he can't swallow that. And I thought, well, what about chewing it, grinding it? The root beer belly, that's a yummy thing. And I would really like a comprehensive recommendation for neurological.
Okay, well, there you go. Now let's go back. 81 years ago. When I was 4 years old, I started getting weird things happening to me. They didn't have a name for it back then. It turned out it was autism and aggressive schizophrenia. Okay. It got worse and worse and worse over 5 years. By the time I was 9, they were going to institutionalize me. I'd seen 20 different doctors, pediatricians, psychiatrists, eye doctors, you name it. The last one was Mary Jane Skeffington. She's a little grandmotherly type pediatrician. And she says, he's going to have to be institutionalized. He's going to hurt somebody or hurt somebody else. I'm 9 years old. So I said, Mom, what does that mean? She says, well, they're going to put you in a hospital. I said, well, how long am I going to be in there? And she says, well, maybe for the rest of your life. Well, that night when everybody else went to bed, I'm sitting on the end of my bed out in this little Angus farm in Missouri. And I'm thinking, I'm eating the same thing all those calves and the pigs and the chickens and so forth are eating out there. How come they don't have the same problems I have? And then I thought, no, wait a minute. We're not eating the same thing. They're eating some of the same things I am, but we're also giving them vitamins and minerals, which we're not taking. So the next morning, I dumped my Cheerios out in the lawn for the chickens, and I filled my pockets full of the alfalfa pellets we were giving the calves and the pigs, and I started taking the vitamins and minerals along with that we were giving them. To make a long story short, in 3 days' time, I was cured after 5 years of getting worse and worse and worse, what is now called autism and aggressive schizophrenia. Okay. And so in 3 days' time, I was perfectly cured. And people were pointing in the church and pointing at me and whispering. And finally, after about a month, a little old lady comes up to me and says, I hear you can cure my diabetes. I said, ma'am, I'm only 9 years old. I don't even know what diabetes was. So I went and I started looking in animal books about diabetes, and I found out that it was a simple mineral deficiency. When you look in the human books about diabetes, it's a genetic disease. So I started eating the stuff that we were giving the animals, and I'm 81 years old now, and I don't have any health problems. After that, I've had injuries, but I don't have any health problems. I don't have diabetes. I don't have high blood pressure. I don't have kidney failure. I don't have heart disease. I don't have plaque in my arteries. I don't have thyroid. I don't have any of that stuff.
And you have great bone density, Doc. Show them your bone density. Oh, you really do. That's that 81 years old. That is that's true. That's good. So that's the cure for this kid with autism, you say?
Yeah. We need to say now we do have a liquid supplement for little kids, which you could take a liquid supplement. We call it Kids Toddy. It's a liquid. The Kids Toddy per dose per body weight based on the label. You can also take our EFAs so you don't get any blood clots. We have a sports drink, Rebound, with 100 nutrients in it, 78 minerals and vitamins, amino acids. You could drink that, but no Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola and 7-Up and none of that kind of stuff. He needs 3 eggs twice a day with soft yolks, soft boiled, soft poached, soft scrambled in butter. And he can have all these steamed vegetables and things, but no breakfast of champions, no oatmeal, no cereals. If he's going to eat pancakes and waffles, they got to be made with rice flour. Okay, they cannot be made with wheat, butter, and oats. He cannot go to spaghetti factory and think he's going to be gluten-free, eating just vegetables because of the cross-contamination. And so he should show dramatic, very rapid recovery if all this is done. But if he doesn't want to take pills and tablets and capsules, hey, give him the Kids Toddy. It's a liquid.
Great. Sounds great.
You report to us, Carolyn, how he does with these formulas. And
right now, the grandma is discussing it with her children and her in-laws, and we're working on it. She placed an order for herself for her health issues, and now she's approaching the family.
Right. Okay. Yeah. One more question, because Doc is a busy guy, and we're lucky to have gotten him for this hour or so. Any other questions?
Yeah, quickly, Doc. What's on the agenda for acne in teens or adults? Simply, what do we do about that?
Okay, when you have skin problems, whether it's rosacea, which could be called acne, which is kind of red, bumpy stuff on your face and cheeks, butterfly rashes on your face. You get psoriasis, which is acne on your body, eczema, dermatitis. These are all due to a nutritional deficiency of one class of nutrients. People say, well, tell me the nutrient. No. I told you the nutrient, you'd go someplace and try and find that one nutrient, and then you wouldn't get the results because you're missing 89 others. You got to take the whole thing, okay, and they all work together. And you know, again, I get people who they'll say, "Oh, you have an autoimmune disease. You have lupus. You have acne on your face. You got psoriasis in your body. Excuse me. You got fibromyalgia pain all over. You have terrible ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, sciatica. You have all these things." And so you get off of all the bad foods, no fried foods, no processed meats, no oils, no gluten, no wheat, barley, rye, and oats, no sugar. Get them on the 90 essential nutrients. I like when they have that kind of stuff and they're an adult or a teenager, I get them on the Healthy Brain and Heart Pack, the MSM, vitamin D3, the collagen, and the de-stress capsules for the emotional and brain stuff, and de-stress capsules, Synaptive, 3 eggs twice a day with soft yolks. Well, my doctor says it can't have eggs because of gluten. He put me on statin drugs. Well, statin drugs causes Alzheimer's disease. I'll repeat that. Statin drugs, Alzheimer's disease did not exist until they came out with statin drugs. Alzheimer's disease is a deficiency of cholesterol. Cholesterol does not plug your arteries. It's oils, cooking oils, salad dressings that cause plaque in your arteries. You need to give all that stuff up. And when it comes to the eggs, you want the yolks off. Hard-boiled eggs won't work. There's 8 different dementias. I mean, dementias go back to the beginning of time. They mentioned in the Bible. Okay, people lose their memory and all that kind of stuff, right? But there's 8 different ones. So I always treat for all 8, and I take people who've been in a coma for 8 years, diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and I give them our shake and the eggs, our Healthy Brain and Heart Pack, our MSM, our de-stress capsules, our Ultimate Niacin Plus, our Synaptive, and 3 meals, and also our shake. They got to make it with heavy cream, not water. And after 8 years of being in a coma, in 3 days' time, they will wake up and go back to work thinking they've only been asleep one night.
Yes, which was the case with one of your patients.
Ray McGregor was his name.
Right. I just want to reiterate what you just said. Not only is there no genetically inherited disease, according to you, there's no autoimmune disease as well, right?
That's correct.
What then is autoimmune disease for people who claim to have it?
Gluten alert, gluten alert, gluten alert, gluten alert, gluten alert. They cannot absorb nutrients. And so they get a constant picture of these skin issues, bowel issues, and there's variable amounts of arthritis and muscle stuff. But the skin things, the bowel things are consistent with the quote autoimmune unquote diseases.
Right.
No such thing. It's crapola science.
But this revolutionary medicine you're talking about then too. Anything else, Carolyn? Go ahead, Doc. Epigenetics. It's all in that book. Death of the genetic of disease transmission.
Yes.
Diseases are transmitted though, right? Or
well,
no?
They're transmitted because bad habits are transmitted from mother to kids, okay? From grandma to grandkids. It's not transmitted by a gene, it's transmitted by misinformation.
Right. So those women who claim to have inherited the breast cancer gene, who then have mastectomies, what's going on there to prevent?
They're all eating from the same way their grandmother cooked. They're all eating the same way their mother cooked. And so they're eating a cultural diet, okay? When you look at certain cultures, and of course I have another book, which is just a big seller. It's called Immortality. There's also a CD that goes along with Immortality. And the book and the CD, what I did was I went through and I collected the diets and an agricultural analyses of the minerals in the farm soils of all the long living cultures on Earth. They're all in this book and in the CD, Immortality.
What is the secret to immortality?
The 90 essential nutrients, 60 minerals. When you look at all the long-lived cultures, their average lifespan is 165 to 200. Their average lifespan is 165 to 200. Yet today, and they all live around the Giltar Glacier in Hunza, which is between Pakistan and China. You see this, and I collect these birthday announcements 2 or 3 times a year. They'll have a birthday announcement of some guy or gal who's 180 years old or 160 years old, who's out in their garden harvesting corn by hand. So these well documented, this guy just turned 187 years old, and you know, one of the Hunza tribe, blah blah blah, near the Giltar Glacier. And these are the long-lived peoples that the people in the Bible talk about. Okay, 120 should be the average. In America, we get 74.
Right.
Okay, we're not even half of what these people get.
Oh, well, Doc, I know you got to go soon. Carolyn, anything else, or we should save it for next time?
Everything's great, and we'll see you next time. Thanks,
Okay,
Doc.
well, thank you, Carolyn. Hey, thank you so much, Alan. God bless you. God bless all your viewers.
Of course. Thank you for everyone looking on the web chat. We had some good comments there. Doc, I'll give you a date. It might be the beginning of October, so I'll get back to you about that, okay?
Okay, God bless.
I've been talking to Doc Wallach, Youngevity. For those who want to order anything that Doc talked about, call this number, Vital Health News, which is connected to Youngevity, 888-275-7755. I'm Alan Steinfeld, along with Karen Clancy. And thank you for watching. Any questions, you can email me at newrealities@earthlink.net. Thank you all for tuning in. Good night. Thanks. Thanks, Doc.